right, good people of the internet. I am Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report direct message for today, 5/12/2021. As always, subscribe to our YouTube channel, tap that notification bell, see what happens. You never know. There is a ton to get to today, so I'm going to try to cover as much as possible. I want to preface everything that I'm going to do today by saying that I do not consider myself a journalist. Now, we don't have many journalists these days. We've got journalists, meaning we've got activists that work at CNN and the New York Times, and that, basically pretend. These are people who pretend, they LARP, live action role play, they LARP as journalists, but they're usually Democrat or lefty or woke activists more than anything else. And one of the things that I've been talking about on this show now for months and months is that we've been in a reality war. That is what so much of the tension is about. We don't know what our neighbors believe. We don't know what our family's members believe. And depending on what the algorithms are feeding you, who you're following, what you're reading, what social circles you're in, all of those things, you could basically live in a completely alternate reality as someone else. And that tension cannot last for that long. It just can't last for that long. And we could look back and go, say in the 1970s when we had 3 network news channels, ABC, NBC, CBS, and Walter Cronkite, and it was before cable news, like we could all sort of agree on basic facts, but we didn't get that many facts, right? We didn't get a broad swath of information because they were all on at 6:30. You kind of saw the same thing on each channel. Maybe you basically watched one because you like Peter Jennings more than you like Dan Rather, more than you like Tom Brokaw or something like that. But there was a limited amount of information, and it's better that we have more information. Of course, I'm a more information guy. I want there to be more information out there, but we really need to figure out a way to get to something truthful. And I think at this point, and I'll get to a bunch of this related to the stories today, the reality war that I've been talking about has basically morphed into a war on truth. There is an absolute war on truth, and I think we are running out of people that are willing to stand up for truth. And before I get to the stories, I just want to harken back to a video I showed last week when Jordan Peterson was on the Tucker Carlson show on Fox Nation, not his Fox News show, and they were talking about truth. And Jordan said that at one point in his life, when he was around 25 years old, he decided to start telling the truth for truth's sake. Not that telling the truth will automatically mean a good conclusion will come. You could tell the truth in some pretty brutal things, to use a Jordan Peterson adjective. Some pretty brutal things could happen to you. But if you believe that the truth is inherently good and right, then no matter what happens, if you tell the truth, it will be better than all the possible alternatives. May not be the easiest walk down the road, but it will be better than all the others. And then Jordan went on to say that that in and of itself is the ultimate expression of faith, that I will tell the truth for truth's sake, damned be the consequences, that actually is an expression of faith. That makes a lot of sense to me. That actually connects the mind and the heart to me and the spirit to me in a way that I think is really powerful. And I'm really trying to do it. And I'm going to just clean up some of the mess that's out there right now because the truth is under assault. Real quick, I was on Twitter this morning, and Twitter, you ignorant slut. Nobody should be on Twitter. It's a horrible, horrible place. But I tweeted out a video yesterday of a bunch of Israelis sitting in an Israeli town and a bomb just going off there, and you see the fireball and people running and all of that stuff. And in effect, let's put up the first tweet that I put out there, and then we'll get to the stories. I wrote, Israel, let's get it up there. I said, Israel is the only place where Muslims, Jews, and Christians live peacefully and equally under the law. That's what Hamas and the Ilhan Omar crowd are taking direct aim at. Now, obviously, I'm talking about the Middle East there, of course, right? We're doing it pretty well in America. Now, I know that the wokesters and the Marxists and the communists don't like America either, and they're not happy with our coexistence, but obviously I'm talking about Israel. And then this morning, and I hate to get into these little Twitter fracases, but then Marianne Williamson, the former Democratic candidate for president who I had on the show, she tweeted at me, she said, "Just not true, Dave. It's just not true." Now, she did what lefties tend to do with arguments. She didn't make an argument, she didn't make a statement, or give me anything I could rebut there. She just said that what I said is untrue. Now, it is 100% fact that that is true. You can go to Jerusalem even right now, and there are women, Muslim women in burqas on buses with Orthodox Jewish men. It doesn't mean that it's perfect, but the 20% of Israeli Arabs who live in Israel have more voting rights and more equality than any Arab in any other country. Fact. This is just a fact. I know it's an uncomfortable fact for the haters, but it's just a fact. But she did what they always do, which is instead of actually making a statement that I could refute, just says this blanket thing, in essence calling me a liar. So I wrote, and I'm sorry that I'm giving you guys this in a certain respect, because these Twitter things are sort of nonsensical, but I think this illustrates a broader point. So, and especially because the woman ran for president, for God's sakes, I said, how about say a statement I can actually refute? Where in the Middle East is there any coexistence remotely like Israel? Also, remember when you told me how insane hatred from the left is, and that you understand why I'm more libertarian? Strange that you said that when the cameras were off. Okay, so then I did escalate the situation there. So just to be clear, again, there's no place that has the coexistence like Israel, and in many ways that's actually what's under attack right now, because the Marxists and the communists and the wokesters, they don't want coexistence, right? They're actually the racists. Okay, I think you guys get all that. The reason I went in on Marianne here is because she, not only did she do the usual lefty attack, which is you're not saying anything, you're just implying that I'm a liar, but when I ended my interview with her, and many of you saw that interview, I treated her with 100% respect, the same exact way I've treated every single one of my guests. I suspect anyone watching this, even my haters that are watching this, that you've never seen me treat any guest differently. I treat all my guests the same. As a matter of fact, it became so obvious in the middle of the interview with Marianne Williamson that we so look at the world differently, meaning she's a collectivist. She believes in collective guilt. She believes white people should be collectively guilty for the sins or even the not sins of their ancestors. No one in my family owned slaves. She's a collectivist and I'm an individualist. I believe you should be judged on your actions and your thoughts and your words. But I wanted to treat her fairly, so I actually stopped in the middle of the interview. You guys can check it out. And I said, hey, I just want to stop for a second and just say that we have a fundamental impasse here in terms of our philosophy of life, but let's go ahead and keep talking, which we did. Now, the reason that I even brought up this other thing is because after the interview, the second the cameras went off, she started going all in on the hate she gets from the left and how bananas the left has gone and that they're not liberal anymore, and she understands why I'm more libertarian and the rest of it. It was like, well, lady, why didn't you say any of that when you were on camera? So I felt sort of like exposing Marianne Williamson, because that's exactly what she did, that when she was on air, she says one thing, and when she's off air, she says another thing. By the way, just in case you think I'm making that up, she also got caught on a live mic moment, I think on what show was that on? There was a live mic moment, I think it maybe was on an OAN show or a Newsmax show, where she said the exact same thing, meaning she thought she was off air, and the second she gets off air, she's talking about how evil the left is, and she understands why the right calls them godless and everything else. So I'm not making this up, I assure you. In any event, I don't want to get lost in Twitter drama, but I decided, Marianne, and I think you're watching, Marianne, because I'm doing this show in honor of you, and I tweeted you the link and everything. I decided, I know you love crystals. I don't have any crystals here, but I do have a rock. I went out right before the show. I just went out into the backyard. The show that she was on where she got caught on the hot mic, we're basically saying the exact same thing I'm telling you she said to me on hot mic, was the Eric Bowling show, and you can find that clip. It went viral. But I don't have any crystals, and I know you love crystals. I do have a rock, and I found this rock in the backyard. It's a very nice, actually, gray, a sort of polished, soft, very lovely rock here. And I wrote Marianne Stinks on it, and I signed it, Dave Rubin. And I'm going to give this rock away. So someone in the Rubin Report community, if you go to rubinreport.locals.com, just post why you'd like this rock. That's all. Just post why you'd like the Marianne Williamson rock. Again, I apologize for not having a power crystal or whatever those things are. I've got a rock, and I want someone to have that rock. Have a great day, Marianne. All right, guys, before I get to everything else, I want to talk to you about Bonner Private Wine. If you're a health-conscious red wine lover like me, here's how to make your next drink 10 times healthier. Down in Argentina, they make this really dark red wine from Malbec grapes grown at 9,000 feet. They've lab tested these wines and found that they contain up to 10 times the levels of a longevity and heart health nutrient, called resveratrol. Resveratrol is powerful stuff. It pops up again and again in studies on longevity, heart health, and brain health. These wines also have 90% less sugar, fewer chemicals, fewer additives. Plus, if you love steak and BBQ like I do, red wine has been shown to actually make red meat healthier. But the best thing about these wines is that they taste great with notes of blackberry, leather, cherry, and smoke. Today, the guys at freethinkerwine.com are giving you 50% off their best Malbecs, and if you'll order right now, you'll also get 50% off shipping. Wine makes a great gift, even if it's just for yourself. Trust me, I know. Just visit freethinkerwine.com today. That's freethinkerwine.com. And now back to me. Okay, and again, if you want this rock, I was thinking about this the whole time I'm reading that thing. It's like, man, people are gonna want this rock. Marianne, people want this rock. Marianne Stinks, signed by Dave Rubin, right from my backyard, people. Picked it up myself. You can get that rock. Just tell me why you want it at rubinreport.locals.com. Okay, so there's obviously a ton going on in the Middle East. And I would preface this all by saying, we had 4 years of that orange guy, remember orange guy? And there were 5 peace deals struck in the Middle East. There was virtually no violence to speak of related to the Israelis and the Palestinians. The embassy moved. We moved the American embassy from Tel Aviv to the capital of Israel, which is Jerusalem. The media went bananas, the blue anon media. Oh, there's going to be violence and mass death and everything else. No, there was nothing. And then actually other countries started doing the same. And things were actually shifting in a new way. By looking at the Middle East in a new way, things were getting more peaceful, right? And I know I'm a dreamer, but I always thought Middle East peace was something that we all kind of wanted. Well, it seems to be crumbling at a rapid pace right now. And this is in large part to the Biden administration that is flat out just going back to the Obama policies. Excuse me. A lot of talking, people. So basically the Biden administration is going back to all of the sort of failed stuff with the Obama administration. So let me just catch you up on a little bit of what's gone on over the last little bit. This is from Stand With Us. In the past 48 hours, over 500 rockets were fired from Gaza into Israel. And then, of course, Israel is responding with targeted bombings of Gaza. And unfortunately, the Hamas operatives, they use schools and hospitals and places where there are women and children to shoot the rockets from. Thus, Israel has to respond, and people are going to get killed. It's just how it is. We've got this absolutely incredible video. I'm sure many of you have seen this already. It's just extraordinary, from a guy by the name of Joe Truzman. And this is watching Israel's Iron Dome take out rockets. So what you're going to be seeing here are rockets are flying in from Gaza, and the Iron Dome is shooting these rockets out of the sky. I mean, it's truly a modern miracle. Take a look. Okay, so hundreds of those rockets are flying all over the country, and for every one of those rockets that are indiscriminately fired, they could land in a kindergarten, they could land at a library, at an old age home. Doesn't matter. That's part of what they want the chaos to do. So the Iron Dome is actually pretty incredible. They actually let some of the rockets go. So if they see that a rocket's going to hit an open field or something like that, they don't waste the missile shooting it down. But you can see it's blowing up all sorts of rockets over there. But of course, this is causing all sorts of chaos all over the world, because there seems to be some sort of theory related to no Jews, no news. And people are going bananas. And Rashida Tlaib, who's one of the main members of the squad, and I've been trying to tell people for a long time that the Democratic Party of yesterday is completely gone. It has been rotted out. It is a woke, I would argue, at this point, basically socialist party. Well, there was a Free Palestine rally, and Rashida Tlaib showed up, and you really listen to her language and listen to the specifics of what she's saying.
What they do understand is that people died solely because of who they are, because they were Palestinian, because they were of a certain faith, whatever it is. They were completely alienated, killed, and the ethnic cleansing continues now. And so I tell all of you, you will not whitewash, you will not take away my family's and ancestors' history. You will not. You will not. Thousands and thousands continue to be displaced and pushed out of their homes and their land. Enough. And so many folks are going to continue to try to gaslight us, target us, bully us. But we won't. We will not be pushed down because we all deserve to live freely and with human dignity.
Okay, so she's a liar on many fronts. So first off, ethnic cleansing. She's claiming that there's ethnic cleansing, and we hear this all the time, that there's a genocide of Gaza. Actually, let's jump ahead for a second. Let's show the map. I'm sorry, so let's show not the map. Let's show the population growth in Gaza. The next one. Yeah. So this is the population growth in Gaza. We will post the link to it down below. You can find this all over the place. But the population growth in Gaza is actually exploding. It's actually exploding. So if this is a genocide or ethnic cleansing, it's the worst one imaginable. Now, in a real genocide, a real ethnic cleansing, say the Holocaust, for example, when 6 million Jews were exterminated in Europe, the population drops. But this way, the population is going up. So she is just saying that something that is completely untrue. Now let's jump back to the first map let's show the map of the Middle East. Okay, so one of the things that I think is a problem related to talking about this part of the world is nobody has a freaking clue what the size and geographic situation of any of this stuff is. So Israel is an absolutely tiny country in a pretty rough neighborhood. There's one tiny little Jewish state. There's many Arab states there, right? Okay, that's just fine. It's a tiny little state there, basically the size of New Jersey, just to give you some context. So can we pull up the map of the United States? Do we have that, the map of the United States? Yeah, so there you're seeing the map of the United States, and Israel is basically the size of New Jersey in a very tiny little area. Now let's show the close-up of Israel. Let me pull that up for just a sec. Yeah, okay, so here's a close-up of Israel, what you're seeing right there. And what you're seeing is Gaza is the sort of bottom by the water with that border of Egypt. And you hear all these people saying Israel is trapping them. They're trapping them in Gaza. Well, there is a border with Egypt. There is a border with Egypt. And by the way, nobody wants to talk about this, but Egypt used to control Gaza until 1967, and then they tried to invade Israel and lost a war, right? There was no Palestine. There's no Palestine nation. When people tell you there was a Palestine, who was the prime minister? Who was the president? It didn't exist, and I'll get into the history in just a sec. And I know this is sort of all exhausting to talk about because it's like, why should anyone care about any of this? But I'm trying to just clean up some of the things that are so untrue. So let's just put that close-up map up again. So when you see a map like this, and you're first seeing how tiny Israel is with a bunch of much bigger states that aren't that thrilled that the Jews carved out this tiny little place in the Middle East that has no oil also. A bunch of them have some oil. Well, if Israel was doing all these horrible things to the Gazans, by the way, if there was ethnic cleansing in Gaza, they took all the Jews out. You may remember that about 20 years ago. They took every single Jew out. They left greenhouses, they left temples, they left structures for the Palestinians to rebuild things, and they burned them all down. But Israel actually did ethnic cleansing of Jews. They took every Jew out of Gaza. So Hitler would love Gaza. It's completely Judenrein, right? There's no Jews in Gaza. Maybe there's probably one very confused Jew who got left, something like that. But the border, put it up one more time. The border there, as you can see, there's a border with Egypt. So you would think that they're brothers in Egypt. If Israel was slaughtering the Gazans mercilessly, you would think they would let them through the border, but no. Actually, in 2014, Egypt bombed the hell out of the border, blowing up tons of houses, blowing up tunnels that people were making their way into Egypt through. Again, you can Google this. Don't trust me. Don't take my word for it. So they are partaking in the blockade. They are partaking in the borders because Egypt wants to have its borders. By the way, one more time on that map, please. By the way, the part of Egypt that you're seeing there, when you see the word Egypt, that's actually straddling Egypt proper, and that whole huge area right below Israel there, that's Sinai. Israel actually won that entire piece of land, which is bigger than Israel itself. They won that piece of land after a war, and what did they do? They gave it back in honor of a piece of paper saying, let's have peace with Egypt, which is basically what they've had, even if it is a cold peace. And then let's just throw up one other map. Let's throw up the four pictures there from the Ottoman Empire and the United Nations. Okay, so what you're seeing here, so there's also a lot of confusion. So when I say that Palestine never existed, it never existed as a nation, meaning that there were Arabs and Jews and Christians, by the way, and Druze and all sorts of other people who lived in an area that at times was known as Palestine. By the way, there were parts of it, the West Bank, we now call it the West Bank. For centuries, it was known as Judea and Samaria, right? Like that's Jews lived in Judea. That Jesus guy lived in Bethlehem. That's in the West Bank. Jesus, Jew. He was a Jew. That story about Hanukkah when the Jews are defending the Judean hills, the Maccabees are defending the Judean hills against the Greeks, that's in the West Bank, Judea. So Rashida Tlaib, it's like, you don't even want any Jews to live there now. I'm not even making an argument actually over who was there first and what, but the point is we should know some basic truths. So what we're showing you right now is that pretty much before World War I, okay, for many, many years, for hundreds of years in essence, the place known as Palestine, which was not a nation, it was just this area that there was pretty much nothing there also, by the way. It was sort of a swamp and a desert. It was controlled by the Ottoman Empire. Then at the end of World War I, the Ottoman Empire collapsed and the British took over. So then there was something called the British Mandate of Palestine. It was part of England and they basically controlled the entire area. Again, there was no nation of Palestine. There was no Arab or Muslim nation known as Palestine. And Jews lived there, and Arabs lived there, and Christians lived there. And you can find New York Times articles. You can find New York Times articles from that time where the Arab countries are boycotting Palestine. And the reason they're boycotting Palestine is because Palestine is where the Jews were. There was something called the Palestine Post, which is now the Jerusalem Post, because it was the Jews having the newspaper. And the soccer team, the official soccer team, was the Palestinian soccer team. It was a bunch of Jews. Okay, so then what happened? In 1947, the British were like, okay, we got to get out of here because the Middle East is a freaking mess. So they offered the 1947 partition plan, and they said, basically, we're going to split this things up. We're going to have an Arab state and a Jewish state. There was no Palestinian state because there was no people known as Palestinians. They were Arabs that lived in that area. That's just fine. It's just true. The Israelis, the to-be Israelis, the Jews said, yes, we'll take the split. And the Arabs said no. And then what happened? Israel then went ahead and said, okay, then we're a nation. And all the Arab countries launched a war. And then what you're getting, so now we're looking at the third one here, the rejection. Then you have what Israel is, right? Now, in 1967, and this is the fourth image there, and I'm trying to run through a whole bunch of this real quick for you guys. This is like a crazy thing to do. In 1967, there was another war launched by all the Arab countries, and in essence, there was an occupation, or Israel basically took back the West Bank from Jordan. That's what you're seeing on the right over there, and they took the Gaza from Egypt. So from 1948. From the beginning of Israel to 1967, they won a war in 48 and then won a war in 67. That, in essence, is where Gaza and the West Bank came from. So they were never a continuous thing. They were never a nation or anything like that. The last two images that you're seeing, in essence, the first time the Palestinians ever got any sort of self-determination, when they allowed the Palestinian Authority to come in and say, okay, you can govern over your own people in the West Bank, is the Oslo Accords, which was 1994, right? And most people think it was probably a mistake at this point. But that's when they got some level of autonomy. So ironically, it was Israel who gave them some level of autonomy. Anyway, I know this was a little bit messy, and I'm trying to do a lot of stuff at once, and it's a very, it's so complex. But nothing that I said here was unfactual. Nothing that I said here was unfactual. I know that I'll probably get Marianne Williamson calling me a liar or something like that. But the point is, and all of this being said, you still have two peoples who are not thrilled with each other, and you got to figure out how to make something work. But if you think that indiscriminately firing rockets into a country is going to get that to happen, well, then that doesn't make any sense. I mean, every country, I would say this about every single country on earth, every single country has the duty. It is actually the number one responsibility to defend its citizens. That's what it is. So if Hamas thinks that they're defending their citizens by doing this, it doesn't seem like that's really working, right? And Israel has to defend their citizens. It's as simple as that. Hopefully I don't have to do these history lessons that often, but I hope that gave you a little bit of context. We'll post some of the links down below so that you'll be able to get some real information yourself. But everything that I just said there is true. Hopefully it wasn't too messy. I think I made some sense of it. So there you go. All right, let's move on. Rand Paul got into a big fracas with Dr. Fauci the other day. It's actually quite amazing. So we've got a couple quotes here from Mediaite, and of course this is all about what's going on with COVID. Dr. Anthony Fauci and Senator Rand Paul engaged in an epic battle over the origins of the deadly COVID-19 contagion. And here's the key part. So there are two competing theories of its origins. One is that it emanated from wet markets in Wuhan, China that sold civets, which had contracted SARS-CoV-2 from wild bats. The other theory is that the deadly pathogen came from a world-famous virology lab based in Wuhan, either accidentally or via some more conspiratorial means. Now let's show you some video of Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci.
The NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute
Do they fund
of
Dr.
Virology.
Barrick?
We do not fund.
Do you fund Dr. Barrick's gain-of-function research?
Dr. Barrett does not doing gain-of-function research, and if it is, it's according to the guidelines, and it is being conducted in North Carolina, not
You don't think
in
inserting
China.
a bat virus spike protein that he got from the Wuhan Institute into the SARS virus is gain-of-function?
That is
You would be
not-
in the minority because at least 200 scientists have signed a statement from the Cambridge Working Group saying that it is gain-of-function.
The NIH and NIAID categorically has not funded gain-of-function research to be conducted in the Wuhan Institute of
You
Virology.
do support it in the U.S. We have 11 labs doing it, and you have allowed it here. We have a committee to do it, but the committee has granted every exemption. You're fooling with Mother Nature here. You're allowing super viruses to be created with a 15% mortality. It's very dangerous. I think it was a huge mistake to share this with China, and it's a huge mistake to allow this to continue in the United States. And we should be very careful to investigate where this virus came from.
I fully agree that you should investigate where the virus came from.
Okay, so what you're hearing there is some debate as to where the virus came from. It seems to me, now I don't have all the information on this, it seems to me that Rand Paul is trying to figure out exactly what's going on here and who funded it and where it came from. But it sort of feels like this is something we're not supposed to talk about, right? Like, are they going to show this on CNN? Are they going to talk about this on the New York Times? Like, we should know what happened here. Did this come, this thing, this virus that in essence has shut down the world for a year and a half, that still has countries in various states of lockdown. I mean, you all know what's happening up in Canada. You know what's happening in all sorts of different states here in the United States. Should we actually do the research to find out who was funding the lab in Wuhan? Did it come from the wet markets? Are there corporate interests that have any connections to any of these things that maybe Fauci's involved in, or any of this stuff? Like, should we be allowed to talk about it? That's all I'm asking here. I actually don't have a definitive statement on what I actually think happened here. I happen to think that Rand Paul is a pretty decent guy. I happen to think that he's someone that's thorough, that actually is always watching out for the ever-encroaching power of the government. And then, of course, you have Fauci, who's sort of doing the reverse. He really seemingly likes to have the power to keep us in lockdowns and wearing 87 masks and not visiting family members and everything else. So my only takeaway from that is we should at least be talking about this stuff. Anyway, we're actually going to drop our third story, which is about the gas shortages, because I went a little bit long today, because obviously that first story was a lot to unpack, and I have no doubt that it will be clipped and my haters will be out and about, but I believe that telling the truth is important. I will keep talking about this stuff. I will try to analyze it and bring it to you in the clearest way that I know how. And again, I do not consider myself a journalist. We live in a time where journalism has been decimated by journalists. And then it leaves a couple people, I suppose, to try to make some sense of the world. And that is really just how it is. And it's a very strange thing. Part 3 of my interview with Senator Josh Hawley is up right now. It's all about big tech and what we can do, what we should do, what maybe we should have done that we didn't do, and all that good stuff. The full episode, of course, is up already, early and ad-free at rubinreport.locals.com. And speaking of that, if you want this rock, Marianne sucks, because she didn't make an argument to me, and then when the cameras went off, she said something completely different than she did for the hour we were on camera. If you want that, just tell me why at rubinreport.locals.com. And our Friday panel is with two of my favorite guests and good friends, Douglas Murray and Peter Boghossian. They are doing a documentary with filmmaker Travis Brown, and it's all about colleges and wokeism and all the stuff that we talk about all the time. Okay, guys, this felt like some heavy lifting today. I think I did it in a pretty functional way with a lot of papers in front of me, but mostly just the stuff that I know to be true, and we sourced all of this stuff. And I would welcome you to look at those maps. Look at the maps related to the sizes here. Look at the maps. Understand that the Ottoman Empire existed, and that the British Empire existed, and that there were peace deals that were turned down. I think in total the Palestinians have rejected 6 peace deals, 6 offers of would you like a state? We will give you a state. And 6 times they said no. Bill Clinton, I mean, I have no great love for Bill Clinton, but Bill Clinton in his book talks about how when they were trying to have their peace deals with Yasser Arafat and Ehud Barak, that basically Barak made all the concessions and Arafat basically was like, look, if I take this deal, my own people are going to kill me, so we're not going to take it. And then he never showed up to the subsequent meeting. I think I'm getting that basically right. So it's just messy, and I'll try to continue to have conversations about this stuff that hopefully will clean things up instead of adding more fuel to the fire, but you know, I'm just human too. So anyway, have a great day, everybody. Oh, I'm heading off to Dallas. I'm going to Dallas. Sometimes I don't even know where I'm going. I'm going to Dallas. I'm going to be doing some documentary stuff down there, and then a whole bunch of stuff with the Blaze guys on Friday. So we are pre-taping the Friday show that I just mentioned. So maybe I'll do a meetup in Dallas. Let's see what we can figure out. But if you want to find out about it, rubinreport.locals.com. All right, have a great day, everybody. Don't go crazy. It's all going to be okay. We've been through this before. Life's weird, but it finds a way. Okay, that's it.